Hi, everyone. Welcome to this quick introduction to the IIIF community. I'm Meg O'Hearn. I'm the Community and Events Coordinator for the IIIF Consortium, and I work alongside Josh Hadro and Glenn Robson to support the various activities of the community, including events like the one that you're attending today. So thanks for joining me on this quick introduction, and let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to start off by sharing a photograph of one of the last times that we were able to hold a conference in person. This picture is from Göttingen, Germany in the summer of 2019. And while it's sad that we can't get together in the same room today, it's exciting to be able to talk about IIIF with a huge group of people like we have attending virtually this week. So IIIF is implemented globally by over 120 institutions. These are, of course, just the ones that we know about as an open source framework instead of APIs. Anyone can adopt IIIF. And here's a map showing implementations globally. So the blue dots are IIIF consortium members who financially support the community, and the red dots are other institutions who have implemented IIIF. The IIIF community has grown considerably over the last few years, and the number of attendees joining us at this conference this week, nearly 1,800, is really a testament to its growth. And so much about IIIF comes down to the community that's involved in it. In fact, so much so that we define IIIF as both a globally adopted open source standard for delivering image and audio visual resources on the web, and also as a global community, open global community of software developers, librarians, researchers, educators, museums, universities, creative agencies, et cetera. All these people who come together to develop the APIs, implement them in software, and expose their collections in IIIF. So it's really a grassroots effort between many different institutions and people to work together to solve their problems and benefit from collaboration and others' experiences. So today's session is really intended to be an overview of how this community works and how you can get involved in ways that make sense for you. And that's a journey that you've actually started by joining us for this conference today. So thank you. So having said that, here's just a quick look at what we'll be covering in this session. First, we'll dive into community and all the different community groups that keep IIIF moving along. And then we'll look at the difference between the community and the consortium, also known as IIIFC. And then we'll also look at some of the ways that you can get involved. So there are several types of groups in the IIIF community. First are the community groups, then the technical specification groups, the editors, and the coordinating committee. And I'll go into what each of these groups does a little bit more deeply. But first, while we're looking at the community at a high level, here's a diagram that kind of attempts to show you the many different ways that groups of people work together in the IIIF community. It's complicated. There's a lot of intersecting things, a lot of different topics and people and projects. But I think overall, it's important to note that there's this kind of crazy overlap across the groups. They're collaborative. They involve people with different areas of expertise in many different capacities. So going back to the types of group in the IIIF community, starting with community groups. These are basically interest or affinity groups. And they're led by co-chairs for each different topic who organize their meetings and invite speakers or develop topics for conversations that happen during regular calls. So you could say they focus on a variety of topics. So 3D. 3D is actually not yet an official part of the IIIF APIs, but they are people who have formed a group to kind of work together on building consensus before the technical work on the specifications begins to support 3D objects. Some other groups, Discovery for Humans, they're presenting quite a bit at the conference today. They do some work on UX type topics in IIIF. Manuscripts is one of the longest standing IIIF groups. Outreach works on kind of finding ways to reach out to new and more diverse communities to spread the word about IIIF, et cetera. So you can visit this URL on the screen to learn more about the groups and see what interests you. And just keep in mind, of course, that anyone can join a group call. Next is the technical specifications group. And you'll probably hear these referred to as TSGs. We're big on acronyms here. So these groups work together on laying groundwork for upcoming changes to the IIIF specifications. So they have the specific charge of writing documentation for different applications of IIIF, and they work from user stories or use cases that community members submit through GitHub. And anyone comfortable using GitHub issues can, of course, add to this list. The link is down there. So for an example of how a TSG might work, the AV or audiovisual TSG recently worked out what needed to happen for AV materials to be supported in the IIIF specifications. And they defined that, and when the work was complete with the release of version 3 of the IIIF image and presentation APIs, they then transitioned to a community group for interested people to come together and share their knowledge as they work to implement version 3 of the APIs for their AV materials. And both types of groups, the community groups and the TSGs, are really just based on this idea of mutual respect and inclusion as per our code of conduct. There's a link to it at the bottom of the slide. They work openly. Anyone's invited to the meetings, and public notes are available on the IIIF Google Drive, which is open. Their regular meetings are available openly on the community calendar. Those are linked in the session description in Whova, along with some of the other URLs that I've shown you. And they meet regularly online, as I mentioned, but also just face-to-face at different IIIF meetings and events, such as the conference or the fall working meeting and other stuff. So there's a couple other groups you should also know about to get a fuller sense of how the community works. The editors take feedback from the community in the form of those use cases and a few other forms, and make sure that it's consistent and that the implications of changes are really well thought through and really make sense and are done in the best way. And then they take that knowledge that they've worked through and edit the specification language for the IIIF APIs. And the coordinating committee is an advisory board that kind of helps us make sure we're acting in ways that are the most useful for the broadest number of people in terms of our day-to-day operations and various choices that we make, strategies that we take, etc. So the IIIF community and all of its different groups work basically on ways of implementing IIIF and concerns surrounding that and the many different ways that can be done. And this differs from the work of the consortium. So the consortium is the group that financially supports the work of the community and just makes it possible. It funds the 3 IIIFC staff members who assist the community and help pull things together with this kind of bird's eye view of everything that's going on. The consortium also provides governance and oversight. Consortium members can join the executive committee or the operating committee and help lead strategic direction for the community. And they also get seats on the technical review committee, also called the TRC. Again, love acronyms. And they regularly review and vote on work of the editors and the cookbook group, who create code recipes for creating different things in IIIF to ensure that the changes that are being made make sense for the community more broadly. So, they say, yes, these changes that you've proposed really make sense for us as a group, and we approve them. And so all these different groups get together in a number of different settings, some of which I've mentioned already, both in person and online. So we have 2 major conferences: the annual conference, which takes place in the spring or summer, and that usually trades off between the United States and Europe, although we're definitely looking to expand to different locations. There's the fall working meeting, which is more of a hands-on event where community members can get together and propose and work through new ideas or address outstanding needs. And community members also hold their own events, which include things like workshops or showcases or other things like that. There have been some on some more narrowly focused ideas, such as using IIIF in research. And just a tip, actually, if you take a look at the IIIF hashtag on Twitter, this is a really great way to find out about these kinds of things that are happening near you. And additionally, the IIIF staff, or specifically Glenn Robson, who's our technical coordinator, holds a 5-day online workshop where you can learn the basics of IIIF. It happens roughly monthly, and it's accessible to anyone who is comfortable using the web. And it's just really a great experience for those who would like just some clarity on what IIIF can do and how it works, and to experience that in a really hands-on way with some support from someone who can walk you through working with different aspects of the framework. There's also general community calls on a roughly bi-weekly basis. These are not associated with any sort of community groups. They're kind of led by the IIIF staff, and we invite different folks to talk and either give demos of new projects or come together to discuss different IIIF adjacent topics just together as a group. And then finally, there are just the regular meetings that are held by the community groups and the technical specification groups. And the cadence of those meetings kind of varies depending on what the chairs have deemed to be appropriate. So now let's take a look at the different ways you can get involved. So there are some easy ways, easy things that you can do to kind of stay in touch. The first being super easy, you can just sign up for the newsletter. And this is how you'll learn about new IIIF implementations, new IIIF tools, upcoming events, webinars, trainings, etc. You can join our email list called IIIF Discuss. This is a great place for asking technical questions and getting feedback from others in the community. Slack as well serves a similar purpose. The Slack channels are divided up by a number of different interest groups. And you can also join a training. So we have an upcoming one in July, which that bit.ly link leads to. That link is also on Whova, where you can access it. And that's the 5-day training led by Glenn that I mentioned. Actually, regarding the training, if you're interested in learning a bit more about what it's like to take the course, an attendee wrote a really lovely Medium post about her experience taking it last summer. And she actually ended up joining us as a member of the program committee for the event that you're at today. So you can kind of see the progression of starting out, getting more involved there. And this link is also available on Whova. And then there's some additional ways you can get involved. And these, how far you go really depends on the level of involvement that you're interested in. So as just an individual person, you can do things like just broadly share your knowledge about IIIF with others at your institution or in your region or in your sector. You can join a IIIF community group call. And I just want to say that it's totally fine if you just want to join and observe or listen. There's no pressure to jump in unless you're comfortable. And just know that the IIIF community is available to help you by sharing experiences and answering questions and that sort of thing. And again, the calendar of these calls is available on Whova, the link to it. If you're familiar with IIIF and feel comfortable speaking about it, you could consider running a local event. So actually, at this conference, we actually have a number of groups who have organized regional meetings to share information about IIIF with their local peers, some in their own languages. So we have a French meeting and stuff like that to allow people to come together according to their location, even though we can't necessarily all be together in person. At least we can kind of gather together online. And finally, you could also consider submitting the use cases that I mentioned earlier, if that's an area that you feel comfortable with. Additional next steps. So the next step would be kind of getting involved at an institutional level. So there's even more ways to get involved at this level. The first being joining the IIIF Consortium as either a full or an associate member to help support the work of the community. And there's actually more details at that link, of course, also included on Whova with the other links that I've shared. Another main way is to expose your institution's collections via IIIF and use IIIF compatible software. Or if the software that you currently use isn't compatible, you could also get involved by sending that particular company a note requesting that they do become IIIF compatible. And actually building on that, here's a snapshot of the ecosystem of software and other technologies that have already implemented IIIF that you might have access to. And I should just note that this is not in any way an exhaustive list of software. It's just a few examples. So that's about it for the introduction to the community. We hope you'll stay in touch via the newsletter and other outlets. And feel free to reach out at any time with any questions that you have. So thanks again and have a great conference.